So 41 champions are so far in this game. What can we expect with these champions? How will they perform when working together or fighting against other champions in this meta? All of that and more we're going to be diving into right now. So with reveal season, it's been really fun to be able to see what kind of cards we are going to be getting in this very first set. It's exciting. I gotta say, I am pumped to be able to see how things go. And they have done a really good job as well being able to communicate with the community, make sure that we can get the most information that we need on how this card game is going to work. They've already told us when a regional is going to be, when you can even expect maybe a rotation, at least putting information like that out there for us to be able to gather. With that, that's very heartwarming here for us to be able to see because, for example, with me and Lorcana, they have really sucked when it comes to communication and have just now been finally trying to step it up. When the end of our DLC season in Lorcana ended up happening and finishing out in November, we were like, cool, when is Worlds? And even after the holiday season, because we assumed, people are busy after November and December with that, there was still literally no word. And it wasn't even until late March that someone finally came out and said, hey, I'm the communication guy for, Lorcana and Ravensburger. We're going to be having some really cool live streams coming your way to explain everything. And then finally at that point, we finally got some answers. And even still, they finally said when Worlds is. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, it's kind of tough to be able to do that kind of thing or, what to disclose or even plan ahead, especially when this is their first card game. Don't get me wrong. But still, you need to be able to step up the game and be able to communicate to your community because the lack of communication is going to be a very big deterrent for a lot of players. And luckily, the Disney platform has really been the big thing that's been holding them up so far. They now have some pretty good gameplay as well, and the community is really enjoying where the state of this game is at. But at the same time, this game is now coming in and they are hitting it out of the park from the get-go, where you're able to see alternate art cards. They're having special rarities and alternate art on top of that. And it's just so cool to be able to see. And even with the first set being able to have 300 cards to try to play around with this meta, to be able to test things out, has been really cool to be able to see. So what are these guys actually looking like? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. Now, of course, we have 41 that have been revealed so far, which has been really interesting. And again, this alt art is so cool to be able to see. The fact of the matter that they even have this. Now, again, this is coming from someone who's been playing Lorcana pretty avidly as well, been loving the game. But the hardest part was literally the only thing that they had is an enchanted. They didn't necessarily have any alt art, and it isn't until literally 3 years later that they're finally going to be starting to release a lot of alternate art cards and additional rarities and things like that. Well, that's the tough part because Riftbound is like, well, guess what? We're just going to be releasing all of that from the get-go. You're going to see alternate art cards like with Jinx and with Ari. I'm sure we're probably going to get one with all the other popular characters. We have Volibear that has an alternate art as well. And some really cool stuff that is coming our way. Darius and all of that, which is reflecting a lot of how it is in League of Legends as well. And so that's going to be the interesting thing on how they're able to hit the ground running with this. And I mean, so far, everyone is very dynamic in what they're actually able to do. And yes, I mean, that means that some of them might be a little bit more meta relevant than others, but still, it's very great to see how different each one of these characters are. Now, at the same time, we do have, legends, which are different than champions. Legends are going to actually be what the, basic theme and core of your deck is built around. And that's going to be very different than what you see as a champion. There might be a champion out, but they might not have, a legend card for your deck to be built around. But still, there's some really interesting things to be able to see here. First and foremost, I mean, I'm really liking Kaisa here. She's going to be able to do some really interesting things. Now, you can add that ability right there, and you can only use to be able to play spells. And so that's going to be really interesting to see how that's going to play out, if that's going to be meta relevant. Because right now it's like Ari is actually a pretty interesting one as well, but it doesn't necessarily seem like she has the support around her to really make her meta relevant. And that's going to be the toughest part about Ari. You're able to get her out pretty effectively, and if you can go ahead and get her out onto the battlefield, then you're able to really utilize all of her abilities incredibly well and do her thing to be able to really shut down your opponent. But at the same time, she is so easily targeted that there's just not necessarily a whole lot that you can do. Now, of course, Lee Sin is going to be a very interesting one right now, too, because buff a friendly unit, but the actual Lee Sin himself is able to be buffed an unlimited amount of time. And so you can go ahead and continue to pay 1 to continually buff Lee Sin, make him an absolute tank to just flat out devastate your opponent. And so all of these separate abilities are really cool. And also, like, even Miss Fortune, she's going to be really interesting to see, and I want to see a little bit more even what kind of support we could continue to see around her. But the big thing with her is you can give a unit ganking this turn, and it can be moved from battlefield to battlefield, which can be a really big deal, because otherwise you literally have to go from your ready character that survived, being on the battlefield for an entire turn, back to base, and then on the following turn, unless there's some other outside force to affect it, and then go into the other battlefield. And, Miss Fortune is just saying, hey, guess what? You, tap my ability, you can go ahead and get over. Now, at the same time, Leona is one that I have absolutely loved. And when I was playing Runeterra, Leona was one of my favorite decks when she was meta relevant. Now, with this also, this is going to be just such a fun ability to be able to utilize in the game. When you stun one or more enemy units, buff a friendly unit. If it doesn't have a buff, it gets +1. Now, that's going to be really big here as well, and especially because you could potentially even play the Lee Sin as well in that deck with her being the champion. So that's going to be pretty interesting as well, because let's go ahead and look at Lee Sin. I think I missed him. Wow. There he is. Yep. So, because he is green as well, so you could easily go ahead and complement that with the deck. And so, it's going to be really cool. Now, what's also going to be really fun to be able to see what could be going on as well. Echo has been one of my all-time favorite cards in this set, because he also has a death knell where recycle me to ready your rune. So you could even go ahead, accelerate him, be able to get a lot of things moving, clear a lot of the boards on the battlefield and whatnot, and then upon his death, then you can go ahead and ready up all of your runes to be able to continue to build a very scary board. Now, of course, that's going to be one thing that you really want to utilize on your turn. You don't want necessarily him to be taken care of and all your runes get readied when all of a sudden it's your opponent's turn and you might be able to only play reactions. That's not going to necessarily be the most fun. Now, I will have to say, one of my favorite cards as well has been the Miss Fortune card as well. And can I just say, the full art cards just look so good here. I love that they have been able to do this. And come on, a foil version of this card is just going to look absolutely incredible. With that being said, too, she also has Accelerate and then Ganking. And the first time I move each turn, you may ready another card. So you can go ahead and play her. And then on the following turn, you move her into a battlefield. Then you're able to go ahead and ready a character that has just been summoned this turn. And that's what makes the Volibear combo so powerful. If you go ahead and get Miss Fortune out onto the battlefield, it can be very scary, very fast. Now, of course, Warwick is okay. He's not necessarily the best, but he is able to at least enter ready. He does recycle a rune in that case at a 6 cost, and he only has 5 attack, but at least he has haste, as other people know it by, and he can go ahead and just attack in. Very helpful, at least, going against Victor in that case, but still, not necessarily the best. But come on, these alt cards just look so good. And Volibear is going to be just so scary to have to go against. Now, I'm really curious on if we also have a Darius card that could be utilized here pretty well too, a Darius deck, because he just has a lot of great utility. Needs maybe a little bit more support, but he's able to do just so much to be able to get this going. And the way that you could really start pumping him up could be incredibly scary. And now that's why, Darius, you can go ahead and tap him and add one, on top of that as well. And abilities that add resources can't be your aptitude and get the effect if you've played a card this turn. So you got to just keep that in mind as you utilize it, but it's very easy to, get things going. Still, though, I think Victor is going to be having one of the best, decks in this meta just because of how fast he can go ahead and move. I mean, especially going second. Victor really feels like he's a lot better going second unless you have the battlefield that's going to go ahead and give you an additional, rune at the start of your turn. Then when he goes first, you can go ahead and play a 2 cost and then tap his ability and be able to play a recruit token on turn 1. And then after that, you just go ahead and take both battlefields, which is just absolutely insane. Now, of course, this is one thing that I'm going to be curious about with Set in this case. When you buffed when a buffed unit you control would die, you can pay or to recycle 1 and exhaust it to spend the buff and recall it exhausted instead. And so, you get to send it back to its base. It doesn't count as a move. And when you conquer, you can also ready this as well. So you can really start to utilize a lot of bouncing back and protecting your pieces. And so he might be a really interesting one as well. Now, of course, one of the first ones that we really saw was Yasuo, who was really interesting as well, because you pay to and exert that or tap that to be able to move a friendly unit to or from your base. So you can really go ahead and take something. And if you realize that your opponent is going to be able to just absolutely, run into it after the fact, you can just go ahead, pay to, bring it back. You got the point already. You don't want to lose the unit. You want to live to fight another day, and you can absolutely be able to do so. With that being said, too, though, that is a very scary ability with Yasuo because he has, when I attack, deal damage equal to my might to an enemy unit. And so even if you went ahead and gave a buff to that, you could potentially be doing 7 damage. Now, with that being said, my second favorite card so far in the set, and one of the most powerful ones as well, has been Sona. Now, this is going to be crazy. And I mean, come on, they have to have an alt-art coming out for Sona as well. The DJ one, that's probably one of her most popular skins in League of Legends. And so to be able to have that card in this game, you know it's coming. You know it's coming. Now, with that being said, of course, it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to go because you can go ahead and tack in to a battlefield, have Sona survive it, and then you can ready 4 of your runes to really devastate your opponent with the cards that you have in hand and say, guess what? Good luck, essentially at that point, and to see how things are going to go. Now, of course, we still have a lot of cards that are yet to be revealed, but it is going to be so exciting to be able to see. Now, of course, the Misfortune also got a couple of alt-art cards as well with that. And this one specifically says, you may play me to an open battlefield, which is really cool. So automatically take over from the get-go. And almost a different form of haste in that case, And then friendly units may be played to open battlefield. So even still a good passive account as well, or a passive ability as well with that. And I mean, Set, of course, got his alternate art. Leona's going to be, again, a really interesting one. She has shield, which is +1 might while I'm a defender, making it a little bit more difficult to be able to take that. And then when I attack, stun an enemy unit here. And that could be absolutely crazy because what could end up happening is that you go ahead and especially going against like a Volibear deck, which has not necessarily a lot of creatures out or characters out, but you're able to then go ahead and go where there's just a Volibear, for example, attack in. Leona stuns it, can't do any damage whatsoever, and then it gets destroyed and Leona takes it and then has +1 might on top of that. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this continues to develop as we get cards revealed. Now, of course, Shin as well is going to be really interesting. He can come in as a reaction, kind of something that we saw in Magic the Gathering as well with a ninja commander, essentially. But with that being said, play at any time, even before spells and abilities resolve, including a battlefield you control. You get shield +2 while I'm a defender and tank. I must be assigned combat damage first. You can even just go in and surprise your opponent and just be like, oh, by the way, Shin, you thought that you were going to be taking it. And of course, yes, it does take 3 and a recycle to be able to play him. but still, even just having a shield +2 to be able to do that, coming in almost as a 5 in a location that you're hoping to be able to hold, is going to be a really big thing to make a difference here. Now, Teemo's going to be an interesting one because there isn't necessarily a whole lot of hidden abilities just yet. I'm sure, especially once we get to set 3, set 4, it's going to be really interesting to see maybe all the different hidden abilities that we probably have. But still, this is going to be one that I am going to be wondering about and wanting to see how this is going to continue to develop. But Teemo is a really good card because when you finally do play him, you're able to give him +3 attack and make it to where a bonus of 4 attack is able to happen. Now, with that being said as well, that can be a little bit difficult to actually get utilized efficiently, especially because when I was playing a Victor play, in the gameplay that I posted here on YouTube, you saw, for example, where anytime I saw a face down, card that was hidden in that case, I always went after the, characters that were in that battlefield to try to trigger it before I had to attack in. And if you're able to take care of the characters that are at that battlefield, then they just up and leave, which can be really interesting as well because, then you just can't even necessarily play like the spell ability where it says, destroy, a character at a battlefield. You might not be able to get that off and it just fizzles away. And then you recycle the rune for literally nothing. And so it's going to be interesting to see, but I do also really like the idea of this game being able to recycle things and get things moving and things of that nature as well. It's really fun to see all these different kind of dynamics and balancing acts that, this game is trying to bring, but it's being able to hit the ground running so well with this, and it's just such a fun game that they're able to do here. But with that being said, what are you most excited about with this gameplay right now, and who is your favorite champion? With that also being said, what champion do you hope is going to be coming to this game? Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, guys, have a good one.